Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Secretary, it's always great to see you, and though I probably disagree with 99% of the administration's foreign policy, I will tell you that I admire your service to this country.
Thank you.
I really, really do.
Well, I think I take that as a compliment.
It is clearly a compliment to your service to this country. You know, 3 years ago, I don't want to bring up a sore point, but 3 years ago, we all remember how this administration embarked on a journey to reset the relationship with Russia. And that reset attitude really was, I think, broadened more than just Russia. It was really kind of the entire foreign policy agenda. And as part of that reset, the missile defense, the Polish and Czech-based missile defense systems were abruptly canceled. And how was that seen by our allies? The largest Czech newspaper declared on its front page, "No radar, Russia won." The Polish newspaper called, in their headline said, "Betrayal, the U.S. sold us to Russia and stabbed us in the back." A Romanian newspaper said, "America's betrayal of Europe for the siren call of Russia." It was unfortunately seen by many of our allies, and I think many of our friends, as really as a capitulation and maybe even appeasement. But what was the result of that? I mean, and remember, that was just months after the Russians had invaded our ally Georgia. So right now, the Russians still have about 10,000 troops in Georgia. Russia's threatened to deploy strike forces and ballistic missiles in Kaliningrad. They've even threatened to pull out of the 210 New START treaty. Last September, a bomb blast occurred at an exterior wall of the U.S. Embassy, I believe, in Georgia. And according to press reports, Russia's military intelligence was responsible. More recently, your, I think, very good statements on Russia's attitude dealing with Syria, where you called it despicable, a travesty, and shameful. So that reset with Russia clearly has not had the results that were envisioned. But also then the pressure on Israel, for example. And we've seen the public and private pressure on Israel, where Press Secretary Robert Gibbs accused Netanyahu of weakening trust between the two countries. President Obama told the Jewish leaders that they must search their souls about Israel's dedication to peace. I can go on and on and on. The criticism of the settlements, and yet the response to that by the Palestinians has been, well, we know what it has been, very aggressive, including going to the United Nations. Vis-a-vis Iran, after over 3 years of engagement, they continue their nuclear program. Hezbollah leaders admit they received financial and military backing from Iran. Iranians were plotting to murder people in a restaurant here in Washington, D.C., a foreign diplomat. Iran's growing ties with our hemisphere, including Chavez and Castro, should worry us all. With Cuba, the new attitude were, while the regime, the terrorist regime, has an American hostage since December of 2009, this administration unilaterally loosened sanctions that have meant hundreds of millions of dollars to that regime, something that regime had been lobbying for years. While you're asking for an increase in budgets for a number of different issues, that you are still cutting the funds to broadcast information into Cuba by radio and TV MRT by 25%. And the results, again, we see. China, while they are taking provocative actions in the South China Seas, this administration refused to sell the F-16C and Ds to Taiwan. I could go on and on and on and on. The question is this: is there any thinking about resetting that reset with Russia? Is there any thought about selling the F-16C and Ds to Taiwan and seeing how China has been acting, including with their attitude towards Syria? Is there any thought of resetting the relationship and the unilateral concessions to the Castro regime, at least while an American is still being held hostage? He's lost, as you know, about 100 pounds. We're talking about Alan Gross, who's a U.S. aid worker who has been in prison and sentenced to prison because he was trying to just help the Jewish community hook up to the Internet, something, by the way, that I know Internet freedom is something that you've espoused at great length. So is there a thought of resetting some of those attitudes to show a little bit more firmness in lieu of what we've seen has been the results of that approach?
Well, Congressman, I'm exhausted.
It's exhausting, Madam Secretary.
You know, I have to say I disagree with about 99% of what you said. But
we agree
I
on
certainly,
that.
I certainly respect your very strong feelings, and I will take all of that for the record. I will respond to all of them, but let me just make this point. You know, I think that in a number of the areas where you asked questions, there is no doubt that we are safer, more secure, and more firmly anchored in a large international consensus now than we were 3 years ago. I just fundamentally disagree with your characterization of the changes that were made in this administration about missile defense and about the importance of what was done to move from a system in Europe that our best assessment by technical experts would not work to the phase adaptive approach that actually will work. And the initial concerns, some of which were expressed in headlines, have given way to a greater understanding that what we've done is commit to a system that will protect all of Europe, all of our NATO allies against missile threats from whom we think is the primary source of such threats, namely Iran, as they continue to develop their long-range, medium-range missiles. I don't think you can find an administration that has done more to support the defense of Israel. The amount of money that we have invested, the results of that investment, the very close consultation that goes on a regular basis between our officials. We've had U.S. assistance for security to Israel increase every year since fiscal year 09. We have a request in this budget for $3.1 billion, a $25 million increase. And we have a lot of reason to believe that the work we have done in the last 3 years has really better prepared Israel to face whatever it may in the future. So I'm happy to respond in detail to each and every one of those concerns. But I want to assure you, Congressman, I think that we are making progress on the central national security issues affecting our country.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome, Madam Secretary. I appreciate your service, and you have a great